show in media, a neighbor's choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you today across the world and the nation as we grow our conversation together. And you're a critical part of it. We enjoy your emails, your comments, your inspirations, your book suggestions, your guest recommendations, your insights, your stories of overcoming challenges. I know you have a story that you want to share, and you need to tell us so we can share it across radio airwaves to inspire other people. Aren't you tired of hearing negativity? Every time you turn on TV programming, it programs you to have a foul spirit, to make you hate yourself, to make you feel like you can't do it, to make you feel like you have to run away from life, to make you feel like you got to wait for some wizard to print money out of thin air, that you have to just sit around and be traced and tracked and chipped or whatever, like you're some kind of livestock. That's not human. That's not loving. That's not kind. That's not neighborly. So we need to hear your story. Maybe you have a story right now and you said, I didn't think anybody would hear. But we're different on this program. We bring people in, calling in live from prison before the COVID thing shut that down. Won't allow people to call people. But before that, we had people call in all the time from federal prison with life sentences for first-time nonviolent crimes. People have spent more years in prison than you perhaps have been alive. And we share their story. We share the story of my friend Monica Paulus, who was accused falsely of being a witch, and they tried to burn her at the stake in Papua New Guinea. We'll share your story too. Maybe you have a story, a friend or yourself or a friend, family member who overcome difficulty, who overcame difficulty or are overcoming difficulty. And you can give us an inspiration that we can share, because there's people right now who are so tired because of TV abuse and political abuse. These arrogant people, they control so much of television and newspapers in this hive mind that they have. Love, not hate. And then they laugh about Ivanka Trump going to prison just because she's the daughter of a man they don't like. They're so angry that Trump doesn't want to keep the endless wars going as much as they do, that they just spew bile and nastiness and hate, and they bake it into the culture, and they bake it into the TV programming. You can't even go to see a movie, you can't do anything without them constantly creating this nagging sense of fear and paranoia. And they always have a narrative. You know, how much of our stress, by the way, in our life is accumulated just from television and media? Remember, they used to do the fear and hate about, you know, the 9/11 thing. They said terrorism's around every corner. We have to all be paranoid. And they did nothing of significance to stop the problem of terrorism. We found out they were funding Al-Qaeda and supporting them to take on ISIS, Syria's Assad. They were letting Al-Qaeda out of prison in Libya. That's what, and we're supposed to be handing over our freedoms so that they can keep us safe from terrorism. Remember when they were telling us we had to ban all the guns, and there was a school shooting all the time, and that was the story. They kept, take the guns, take the guns. It's just, they're always creating this psychological trauma on television. The mean world syndrome is very much alive. And they want us to hate the beauty of life. But I know you have a story. Maybe you have an invention you're working on. Maybe you have a painting or a sculpture you'd like to share. Or maybe you have a story of overcoming adversity. Then you can let us know. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com, and we can share your story or bring you on air to tell your story to people who need to hear stories of hope and triumph. Isn't that important to have that? We are made up of the stories that we feed into our minds. So here's a story I want to play real quick. This is a clip from CNN. This is a state kind of propaganda story where they've got the host just smiling and grinning and giving these little puff questions out like he works for Stalin or something. He's just, oh, what are you going to do next? Oh, we're so happy for you. And every time they Jake Tapper, he doesn't do anything to expose, what about the people that you put in prison, Joe Biden, with your crime bill? What about the people that you put in prison, Kamala Harris, to get to where you are now? What about the people of color who you want to bomb and have regime change hell on earth for in Yemen and Syria and everywhere else? He don't do anything truth to power. They're just, state media organs, these garbage programs they put out. But I want to play this clip because I can't tell what story Joe Biden's talking about here. Let's go ahead and roll this clip.
But all kidding aside,
the first lady to be told me she holds them for you.
Yes, she does, but not with she and Kamala have become friends. Yeah. But all kidding aside, it's a matter of the thing. We are simpatico on our philosophy of government and simpatico on how we want to approach these issues that we're facing. And so I don't have, and when we disagree, it'll be just like so far. It's been just like when Barack and I did. It's in private. She'll say, I think we should do A, B, C, or D. And I'll say, I like A, don't like B and C. Mm-hmm. And it's go, okay. Like I told Barack, if I reach something where there's a fundamental disagreement we have based on a moral principle, I'll develop some disease and say I have to resign. We don't have that. We haven't, and we discussed at length our views on foreign policy, on domestic policy, on intelligence. And the great thing is she has a background in the Senate on intelligence, the Intelligence Committee.
I don't know what he's talking about. This is a man who's been given by the media a red carpet welcome the entire time, to have the nuclear codes, to have the ability to create a corporate fascist technocracy. And he does. Did you understand what he was talking about? He said if he disagrees with Kamala Harris, he told Barack, the hell does that have to do with anything? Who is this guy? What have they done to this man? This man needs a break. He's sitting there saying, I told Barack that if there's a disagreement, I'll have a disease and resign. And Kamala's over there. Usually she cackles over everything. I mean, everything. She, just like Hillary Clinton, when she heard that they mob butchered Gaddafi in the streets with bayonets, she goes, ah, sick freak. You have this sick freak, Kamala Harris, always laughing. You're like, hey, what are you going to do? Why did you lie? She just laughs. Weird, freaky stuff. I wonder how many times she laughed as she locked up people of color to make her career advance. I wonder how many times she laughed when she did everything she could to destroy David DeLayden because he exposed that they were selling body parts like sick, disgusting people in Planned Parenthood. I wonder how many times she laughed when she saw Cherie Peoples, a woman of color, trotted out in front of the media that she had arranged in front of her house to film her, a poor woman who's being carted off to jail because her daughter missed too many days of Kamala Harris's precious school system. But she didn't laugh when Joe Biden said this insane gobbledygook. She's over there, no, shaking her head. No, be quiet, stop. So I don't know what in the heck, did we just do here in allowing this stuff, I guess, to be installed into the power, because there's no way of knowing what really happened in a lot of these bizarre states, because you have judges and legislatures and entire, bureaucracies that are aligned with a uniparty status quo. And they don't want Donald Trump back into the party. He's not invited because he's not on the script. He doesn't stay on their mythology. But does anyone understand what Joe Biden said? I don't understand anything what he's talking about. What in the world is this guy up to? I say this is a weekend at Bernie's administration, but what in the world is he talking about? If he disagrees with Kamala Harris and he has a moral disagreement, he told Barack that he's going to resign because he's sick. What? This is the geniuses of the bigots of neoliberalism. This is what we have to deal with. This is what we have to deal with. No wonder these people are stupid enough to believe you can create money by printing it out of thin air. No wonder these people are stupid enough to believe you don't need vitamin D to have health. They think this is smart. They think a man who says, I told Barack that I'm going to have a disease and have to resign if I disagree with Kamala Harris. What is going on? And I'm not even talking about that he's saying a flub. What is he talking about? Nothing they say has any coherence. There's no logic. There's no nothing to it. It's just blabber. And it wouldn't be anything worth paying attention to if they weren't using their corrupt system to do everything they can to mess with your life. It is a lie to say you sit at home, you're not allowed to run your business, and we'll take care of you. Because we know that printing money and welfare checks does not create wealth. So you're not being taken care of. That is a lie. And why do we have to tolerate this kind of insane fantasy stuff? We shouldn't have a conversation in which insanity, hateful, violent insanity, is allowed to be entertained. And it is insane and hateful and violent to tell people, you will not work, and don't worry, you can get on the unemployment or you get on stimulus checks and you'll be okay. And you won't be okay. You cannot create wealth out of thin air. It's not going to keep your savings. It's not going to keep your wealth. It's not going to keep your standard of living and the things that you want. It's going to shred it because you can't create money out of fiat. You can't create wealth out of fiat and have it sustainable for anybody. It doesn't work like that. Let's take a break, and I'm going to get into some of the history and anthropology behind the dynamic we see around the virus and the political lockdown stuff. We're going to take a look at the way kings are used as sacrificial blame targets in times of famine and plagues and so forth, so you understand what's going on now. Once you understand the history of humanity and anthropology, it's very predictable, the things that you see. And it won't be so, it's alarming because humans are doing insane, violent, wicked things to each other, like a homicidal, insane chimp species. But at the same time, it will give you some clarity as the patterns that you see unfolding, and perhaps a bit of hope, because we'll figure out how the master of history himself, Jesus, is dismantling this system that is giving us these clowns that cause so much damage. Back in just a moment. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. FastFreshSeafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Hello, this is David Karnowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. Hello, A Neighbor's Choice is back on broadcast airwaves. I'm your host, David Garnowski. So let's take a look at the book Violence and the Sacred by Renee Girard so we can understand the foundations of where we're at with this weird behavior. You noticed I saw something trending on social media, probably still is, but it was saying something about this is the Biden vaccine and the Trump virus, and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people were just regurgitating Biden vaccine, Trump virus, Biden vaccine, Trump virus. I mean, and you thought your neighbor was rational. Human beings are not rationally driven people. They are swept up by narratives that are contagious. And if you allow negative narratives to go wild, they will transmit awful, wicked outcomes. So you have to push positive narratives, which are truthful narratives, and stand on the side of real victims, stand on the side of the oppressed, stand on the side of human personhood, and then allow that narrative to overcome the fragility of the ugly, nasty narratives that are so contagious at first. So here's a page. This is a portion. I'll just kind of read different things. The sacred king, let's talk about ancient societies now, is also a monster. He is simultaneously God, man, and savage beast. Royal titles like the lion or the leopard may degenerate into mere formulas, but they have their origin in memories of the monstrous double in generative unanimity. Moral and physical monstrosity are thus blended and confused. Like Oedipus, the king is at once stranger and son. Donald Trump has been accused of being a foreign agent for how many years? But he's also a son of wealth and American privilege, right? The most intimate of insiders. He's a part of the elite, rich, white, toxic, masculine, capitalist class, right? But in the most bizarre of outsiders, well, he's got orange hair. You can't even call him by his name. He's Orange Man. They try to denigrate him and marginalize his ethnicity by saying it's actually Drumpf instead of Trump, because they're trying to make fun of ethnic minorities. That's what the left neoliberal racists do. The bigots, they do this stuff. and other groups do it too, but they have the cultural monopoly, so they're able to spread their hateful stuff very effectively, at least for some time. Gerard goes on to say he is an exemplar of enormous tenderness and frightful savagery. And how many times do they say that Donald Trump has tender hands, tiny little hands, that he's very weak, that he's a baby, but he's also a savage, he's frightful, he's a Nazi. Rene Girard says, as an incestual criminal, he's referring to ancient sacred kings. Now, has Donald Trump been accused of incest? Yes. All the time by the neoliberal bigots. They say that he has a thing for his daughter, and they also say he's a criminal. So as an incestuous criminal, he stands above and beyond all the rules he promulgates and enforces. Isn't that the whole narrative of Donald Trump, that he's a trickster, he's playing games with rules, he's a cheater, he didn't win honestly? He is the wisest and most lunatic, the blindest and the most lucid of men. This monopolizing of differences, which makes of the king a sacred monster in every possible sense of the term, finds vivid expression in ritual chants. The chieftain is neither this nor that. The chieftain is neither good nor bad. He is at once a guest, a foreigner, and a host villager. He is the wise man and the fool. It should be no cause for surprise that the august inhabitants of Olympus have been charged with a fair number of rapes, murders, parricides, and incestuous acts, as well as innumerable incidents of savagery and madness. Nor should we be surprised to discover these divine personages seem to be made up of bits and pieces taken from every order of reality, human, animal, inorganic, cosmic. Nothing is more futile than to seek stable distinctions among these monsters, unless it is the attempt to derive psychological insights from their stories, insights pertaining to either to individuals or to the collective consciousness. So when you see these ancient mythological gods, they have all these different contradictory traits, which are in keeping with the feeling that they are the cause of chaos. That's what you see all the time. Donald Trump was an agent of foreign power, and yet he had the most perfectly secure election of all time in 2020, right? He's a rich capitalist, but yet he's a dirty, ugly, nasty, populist who hangs out with savages in the hinterlands of America. You see the contradictions that you see at play here? What's interesting is the article says that when you have a crisis, there becomes a loss of difference between the living and the dead, a casting down of all barriers between two normally separate realms. Isn't that what we see now? We don't even know if the dead are voting now. Don't even know if the dead are rising up to vote. In the stories you hear, there's a confusion between the living and the dead now. We're not sure exactly how to deal with the lethality of a virus. And we're not sure to deal with the lethality and the death caused by the Luddite practices that politicians and bureaucrats are using to supposedly deal with the virus. This is a crisis of undifferentiation that we're in. And it'll take some time for us to work this out. But we'll do it. We'll work it out. And we'll be back in just a moment.
There is all kinds of lunacy going on. The madness of 2020.
Weekdays 11 to 2.
I'm just so fed up with these Democrats. It's unbelievable.
Get it straight from Chris Plant.
They're so hypocritical. It makes me sick.
It's the Chris Plant Show.
This has just got me going on.
And the left is waging war against the police in the United States.
Telling it like it is.
You should be thanked profusely for getting to the point. You're a voice of reason and a sea of idiots.
The Chris Plant Show. Weekdays 11 to 2. News Talk 1040 WHPO.
Issuing new stay-at-home orders as the number of virus cases surge and hospitals fill, the health officers in 6 San Francisco Bay Area counties. New York State reporting over 11,000 new COVID cases yesterday, the highest daily figure since mid-April. Governor Andrew Cuomo.
We have about close to 40% of those beds available.
Cuomo says more than half of the new cases are coming from small gatherings. Predicting a very bleak future without another COVID relief package, President-elect Joe Biden in Wilmington, Delaware.
It's not going to satisfy everybody, but the option is, if you insist on everything, we're likely to get nothing on both sides.
House Speaker Pelosi says there is momentum for passing a stimulus deal that will likely have to be attached to a spending bill that must pass both houses of Congress by next Friday to avert a government shutdown. An up day on Wall Street. Chuck Severson, ABC News.
Hello, David Gronowski here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice, perhaps on our radio affiliates across FM and AM, or our podcasts, wherever podcasts are found, perhaps our video stream, or maybe our website, aneighborschoice.com, wherever you find us. We're so glad you could join us for this important discussion that we are about to have, and I know you're going to enjoy it. We have with us the director for Florida for Right on Crime, Chelsea Murphy. How you doing, Chelsea?
I'm doing great, David. How are you doing?
Oh, doing wonderful. And so glad to have you on the program because we always have great discussions with folks on the front lines of criminal justice reform. And we have a very special guest with us, don't we?
I am super excited he's here.
Well, you set the table for us. Yeah, I know you guys have some background, so let us know who our guest is today.
I am super excited to bring on Congressman-elect Byron Donald. Byron, I'm so excited to hear from you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Chelsea. How are you? It's good. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad, and congratulations. Everybody here in Florida has been rooting for you for a long time. You know, I've been a big supporter from day one, and just so excited for you and what you can do for our country.
Well, very good. It's great to have you on, Byron Donalds. And I understand you are the Congressman-elect for Florida District 19 for the U.S. House. And you describe yourself as liberty-loving, pro-Trump, pro-Second Amendment, pro-life, husband and father to 3 on Twitter. So those are all good things to have as part of our discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think that my politics are pretty simple. It's about, number one, really following the Constitution. Which really brings about all those all the things that I describe myself as, and then really number two is just about making sure that government rules, regulations are just common sense. They're just smart, and we don't just do things because it's the way we have always done them. Making sure we reform what needs to be reformed, so it works best for all Americans.
And you couldn't be more right, and especially talking about things that are right and smart, and talking about smart criminal justice reform. Let's kind of bring it back to way back when you and I first met, and we started talking about criminal justice reform. Obviously, I know it's been a passion of yours, but let's talk about property theft. Maybe start there, and we'll let it go from there. One, I guess, talk about your passion, and then kind of how we got that passed.
Yeah, I mean, look, when I was young, I was arrested twice. Once for marijuana possession. The other was a felony theft charge. I was 18 and 20. Made a lot of mistakes. I was just stupid. I just made a lot of dumb decisions. It was really no one to blame for that. That's all me. And so, having gone through the CJR system, the criminal justice system, I kind of, I just went through it and, just try to make myself a better person. After the fact, going back, going into the legislature, I had, friends and family members who also went through it too. And we noticed, and I knew there were things that, even though you did wrong and you had to pay your debt to society, there were things that just didn't make sense. And so in the Florida legislature, one of the first things I tackled was felony theft. And I remember, Chelsea and I, we had a conversation about it. And, she was explaining to me, like, Florida, which I didn't know at the time, like Florida's felony theft threshold was $300, which was one of the lowest in the entire country, definitely the lowest in the southeast region of the United States. And if you had looked at what was going on in Texas and South Carolina and Georgia, they had been raising that threshold. And so, you sit down and you're like, well, when was the last time we changed it to $300? And that was from 1984. And so then you start thinking about, well, how is it that, because obviously the cost of goods have increased, so somebody could actually steal less products today than they could have in 84 just because of time value of money, but be charged with the same crime. And so that became the point of saying, all right, it's time to raise it in the state of Florida. And we were able to get that accomplished.
Yeah, and you look at, and Brennan, you raised that from 300 to 750, but, you look at other states, Texas is at $2,500, Wisconsin is at, I think, $2,500 or $2,000, and then our neighboring states are higher as well, and so we definitely made a huge stride. Wasn't as bold as some of the other states, but it was definitely a major stride in the past 30 some odd years since it had been changed. And for that, we are forever grateful to you, especially because it's just a conversation that had been neglected and had been very difficult to get through the legislature. And then kind of going forward, unless you got any questions, David, I wanted to talk about his Florida First Step Act and some of the things that he modeled and filed in Florida. Although it did not pass, I think that it had it was a conversation starter and one that the president started as well.
Yeah, I'd like to hear the Florida First Step Act, Byron, if you could share with us.
Well, I mean, again, I think this is one of those things where actually the president is the one who really took the first step. I think the work that he and his administration did with many members of the legislature here in D.C. And, it was really a bipartisan piece of work, which the president, I think, never really got enough credit for. But, at the time, when you were trying to work on criminal justice policy, as a Republican in the state legislature, you frankly, a lot of the hesitancy is, from my own party, from my own colleagues. And I think that's more because they, frankly, had just never dealt with anybody who'd been through the system. So they didn't understand the things that were that just didn't make any sense, that weren't working well. And so when the president, signed the First Step Act in the law, that really changed a lot of things in the party, because it had Republican members actually start taking a look at the policy and saying, well, you know what, that actually does make sense. And so what we try to do in Florida was really mirror that. We try to do a lot of probation reform. We try to have reforms about how far people are housed or incarcerated from their home. We try to do things on technical violations. We try to address mandatory minimums. And because, what you found is that, if somebody is really a bad person and perpetrating a heinous crime against their fellow man, that person or somebody who just got caught up but just didn't have a record or didn't go into it with malicious intent but did break the law, they were getting the same sentence. There was really no discretion at all. And in the Florida system, all the discretion relies with the prosecutor. None of it lies anywhere else throughout the system. And that's one of the things we tried to balance and bring, frankly, smart policy back to that system.
Mm-hmm.
And we were so fortunate. I mean, talking about, although we had folks in our in-party that had trouble with it, we also had champions like yourself, like GOP Chairman Senator Joe Gruters, who was a co-sponsor of the bill, and Senator Rob Bradley, who was chair of Senate Appropriations, was the chairman in the bill sponsor, I should say, in the Senate. And so I feel like we had some really, really great players. And then not to mention the House bill this past year also had, I think it was 20 some odd co-sponsors, 10 of which sat on its first criminal justice committee. So there's definitely support for it. I think that, going forward, we definitely have our groundwork laid out for us. But I think that the appetite is there, and I think the time is now. And we're so grateful for the leadership that you, Congressman-elect, have given us at your time in the legislature. And I guess my next question, as sad as it may be, is, talking about your next steps that don't necessarily include us here in the Florida legislature, but of course affect us here at home, and of course nationally. Well, what do you got going on? I've heard about Freedom Force. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to, what you've got up your sleeve.
Well, I mean, right now, so I'm actually in Washington right now, but I'm about to head home tomorrow in the morning. It's been member orientation, so a lot of it is the nuts and bolts of like putting together your office, hiring staff, stuff like that. Starting to hire staff, starting to hire people who are willing to look at all policy, not just, conservative red meat stuff, although, we're going to do a lot of that. It's also about doing the right policies in many spaces, including criminal justice up here at the federal level. I've had some discussions with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle already because, they've heard about the stuff that I was working on in Florida. So we've had some conversations. We'll see what comes from that. And then you have the stuff like you have the Freedom Force and stuff like that. What happened there was, a couple of members, a couple from Florida, Maria Salazar, in particular in Miami, myself, Burgess Owens in Utah, Nicole Masiatakis, she's Greek, I probably butchered her name, sorry, Nicole, up in New York, Virginia Spratt out of Indiana. Several of us who really just wanted to take a strong stand against socialist policies and really want to make sure that we're embracing economic freedom, we're embracing free markets, and really, like I said at the beginning, embracing sound policy. So the things that just work where, you're not trying to favor one interest over another. I think that's how government works best, is when they just do simple policy that makes sense for everybody. And then people, it's their responsibility in their own lives to kind of figure out, their pathway in life. And so, what we decided to do was just make sure that we had a group of people who were committed to standing up and actually speaking out, not just for those type of policies, but also against policies that come from, primarily the squad, but also the left. So it's been an interesting week because, I went from being a member to then being like a founding member, all depending on who wrote the article or what news station was saying what. But it's really just about making sure we have a group of conservatives who are willing to stand up and be bold and outspoken about the policies that are necessary for the future of the country.
We're speaking with Congressman-elect Byron Donalds, who is going to be representing Florida District 19 in the U.S. House. I wanted to ask you, what is your take on this House bill that passed today, 228 to 164, to decriminalize cannabis? Any thoughts on this bill?
So it's actually, that's actually a pretty interesting one. I think obviously that bill, let's be blunt, that bill's going to die in the Senate. That's just what's going to happen with that bill. I think that bill was unfortunately, even though the policy might be sound, that bill is loaded with politics. The reason why the speaker brought that bill forward is because she didn't want to deal with COVID relief, and then obviously today she came out saying that basically now that she feels she's going to have a new president, now she's willing to actually bargain and do things on COVID relief, which I find to be the most disgusting thing about politics, because she really held up a lot of important reforms. That bill in particular, I don't know the full mechanics of it, so even I got to go back and read it. But I know that there are Democrat members incoming who want to do decriminalization of marijuana on the federal level. Now, that's one where I actually disagree with. I don't think we should do it at the federal level. I think what should be done is that states have to continue to push the envelope on their end when it comes to marijuana policy. A lot of states are already on their pathway to doing it. And I know that sounds like interesting from somebody who actually was arrested for marijuana possession. But this more is about the law, and I think the way laws are balanced. I think that marijuana policy is something at the state level, the many states have to continue to do what they're doing right now. which is a hybrid of decriminalization or medical marijuana or civil citation, however you want to call it. I think at the federal level, what we got to do is we actually have to change federal banking laws around marijuana profits, because you do have states like Colorado, like California, where they have laws that allow for recreational use. They have laws that obviously allow for medical use, but the companies that run those businesses can't put their money into federal banking system. So I was actually having a conversation with a incoming freshman Democrat who's out in New York about this very policy. And so he was like, I don't understand why you don't agree with doing it at the federal level. And I just said, I just think the proper balance is for the states to push their will first. And then as the federal government sees the landscape of what law is around the country, they make the change to comport with state law. My politics, I guess my political philosophy always leans to the federal government is not the dog. It's really the tail. And it should follow suit on what the states are doing, not, preempt what states want to do or how citizens want their states to look like by changing federal law and forcing states to comply with the feds. Mm-hmm. I think the states are the ones who should be changing their laws first.
Do you think that the marijuana should be removed from the schedule of illegal drugs by the Controlled Substances?
Yeah, I do. Now, that's something I do agree with. I do think marijuana should come off of Schedule 1. I mean, if we're going to be blunt about it, it's not cocaine, it's not heroin, it's not crystal meth. It's not crack cocaine or any of that stuff. So I do think it should come off Schedule 1. And I think what you'll see the second it comes off of Schedule 1, the pharmaceutical companies are going to move heavy into that space. You're going to have clinical trials being run on the efficacy of marijuana overall, not just medical. And I think that then takes you down the landscape of shifting marijuana policy, not just at the federal level, but I think across the country in many states. Mm-hmm. I think that, when marijuana policy gets put on the ballot for voters to choose, it passes overwhelmingly. And I don't care if you're talking about Oklahoma, Florida, or California. I think it will pass overwhelmingly no matter what ballot you put on. And no matter what state you put it on to be voted on, that's what I think is going to happen. But I think that as a society, as we change our viewpoints towards marijuana, which is already started, I think it's definitely one of those things where, states have to lead the charge on that. From a federal level, though, I think putting marijuana on Schedule 1 is something that should be changed. Probably should have been changed already.
We're speaking with Congressman-elect Byron Donalds from District 19 in Florida. Do you have any thoughts on civil asset forfeiture and what we can do about that? And also no-knock raids. That's something Senator Rand Paul introduced the Justice for Breonna Taylor Act to deal with no-knock raids. Your thoughts on those two topics?
Right. So I'm going to take no-knock raids first. I'm not a fan, actually. I'm not a fan of that policy. I'm a little concerned about when we do these police reform bills out of D.C., because essentially what happens is that we pass a bill, and I think it's important for the listeners to understand, the federal government has really no control over local law enforcement. What the federal government does do is we provide supplemental funding to local law enforcement and through grants and stuff like that. But then the federal government puts ties on those grants. So we'll say to a law enforcement agency on the local level, hey, yeah, we'll give you a $3 million grant for body armor. But if you want to continue to get it every year, here's some of the things we want you to do. Mm-hmm. As a constitutionalist, that's actually concerning to me. But I do think that we need to do something about no-knock warrants. Because essentially you actually, in a lot of respects, are in violation of Fifth Amendment protections. And I think that's something that, from a federal level, you can make the legal argument that we have a responsibility to make sure that citizens' constitutional rights are not being violated. I think no-knock warrants are akin to that. If you have probable cause to enter somebody's home, law enforcement needs to make themselves known. And I do know that the reason why they do it is because if they're going to a drug house, and you alert yourself, now you're telling the police to be in a gunfight. And that's a whole other situation for another day. Mm-hmm. But I think we have to be very careful with them. I'm not a fan of no-knock warrants. I'd like to see what happens with it.
Very interesting.
And Congressman-elect, to bring it back to Florida and actually bring it back even more local, I know that we've talked about issues that we can do here in Florida, but also some of our biggest opponents have been folks such as the Florida Sheriff's Association, et cetera. As much as my organization and others, we are the biggest advocates for law enforcement and against the defund police. And in fact, we're all about, empowering law enforcement. However, when it comes to stuff like collective bargaining and, qualified immunity and situations like that, I know that there's a bill or two that's been filed for qualified immunity here local in Florida. But to kind of take it one step further and talk about collective bargaining, we have an association that takes a lot of money from their constituents areas, their taxpayers, local taxpayers' dollars, and they use it for various things. Some of it's for purchasing, and a lot of that money should be given back to taxpayers instead of, perhaps funding lobbying efforts or whatever they choose to do so. And so just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that. Wanted to also, this is a super question, wanted to get your thoughts on that, and also what are your suggestions for us going forward as a whole in the Florida legislature now that you're leaving it?
Specific to collective bargaining, and I know they did the bill. I saw an article on the bill about qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is going to be a tough one because you have to also remember, and this has to be put in proper balance, that you do have law enforcement that can go into many different situations which are not as cut and dry as what is projected on media. And so I think that's important to understand. Law enforcement does have to feel that they have the room to operate. You just don't want them operating unlawfully. I really think at the heart of it is not so much qualified immunity. It's more, and I think this is more to your other point, Chelsea, it's the collective bargaining process. I think the vast majority of Floridians and Americans have no problem with law enforcement, but what is starting to grow is that there are citizens do want to make sure that we don't have bad cops on the force. And I think that's the key thing. And the collective bargaining agreements right now with local law enforcement do allow for a very robust defense of officers who may be just bad officers. If you talk to law enforcement guys I do in Collier County and Lee County in my district, they'll tell you, they're like, we know we got bad apples in here. It's just so hard to get rid of them. When I talk to my sheriffs, that's exactly what they tell me. And so I think the real step, I think the real silver bullet, if you will, is not so much in qualified immunity. It's much more in adjustments to collective bargaining. So it is easier to get bad officers off the force. And I think there are good officers who would support that. But of course, they have to deal with their collective bargaining unit as well.
No, and I agree with you. And I hate to say it's a silver bullet, but it almost seems like one because, I want our law enforcement to be protected and to feel like they have the backing of us to do the job that they need to do. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we've got, our taxpayers' dollars being utilized appropriately.
Congressman-elect Byron Donalds, it's been a pleasure talking with you on A Neighbor's Choice, and best of luck as you head to D.C. and keep your fighting spirit for liberty strong over there, because we need those voices out there defending our liberties here at home.
We are so proud of you.
Very good. We'll take a quick break and wrap up when we return, folks. Thanks again, Chelsea Murphy of Right on Crime Florida, for joining us, and Byron Donalds as he heads to Congress to represent District 19 in Florida. Hello, this is David Konoski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality, grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a 6th-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
Forget the mattress and cookie jar. There's a much safer place to put your money, in a bank insured by the FDIC. If you have up to $250,000 in checking, savings, or a CD, you can't lose a penny. Your money is 100% protected. Visit FDIC.gov to learn more, or call 1-877-ASK-FDIC. The more you know, the safer your money.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. A Neighbor's Choice is live. I'm David Gronowski, and we just had a great discussion with Congressman Byron Donalds, representing Florida District 19. Sounds like a person who's got a great understanding of constitutional law and liberty. So we'll see what happens in his journey to Congress. And this is just a reminder, folks, that there's so much that we can do if we stop doing the whole tit for tat, red versus blue dynamic, and really think about human liberty and personhood in everything that we do. Life is sacred. We don't need sacred kings to blame for plagues anymore, and we don't need to sacrifice peasants to some kind of deification of scientism. That's what we have going on right now. Folks want political power. They want to use a crisis to gain power and influence and clout. It's just too intoxicating, the thought that they can control your life. But you and your children are not lab rats. You're not fodder. You're not cow feed. You're a human being. And there's something that's very profound about that. And we shouldn't cheapen it. We shouldn't worship humanity, but we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves.
Your home for news, talk, and information.